Welcome back to Yin and Yang Healing with Kirsten and Dirk. We're exploring beyond the physical, and we have just released the 10th episode. So if you guys haven't listened, go ahead and check that out. But today, Kirsten, we are talking about...
Dun, dun, dun. No, just kidding. I feel like it is kind of one of those topics. Okay, so I was talking with someone, and they had just kind of like made this like comment, and it was just so nonchalant. It was so just like no big deal. It was like, I hate men. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, that's a pretty like intense statement to say, like, I hate men.
Mhm.
And I mean, I know for sure I've said it myself in the past. And it just opened up this dialogue between her and I because it was a woman who said this. And I was like just getting curious. I was like, "Well, why do you hate men? Like what's going on there?" "Well, like they always let you down and like, they never like do anything and blah blah blah." And I just said, I was like, "Is that actually true for like all men? Or are you attracting a certain type of man into your life to show you something?" And
Mhm.
I could tell like it just got the wheels like turning for this person. And I'm so glad because one of the things that I hate is when people walk around and they're like, everyone is like, ba, 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 ba. Or all men are like this, or like all men are lazy. And it's like, is it all men or is it all the men that you have encountered? And that's your
Mhm.
point of view from your past experience. And that your mind is always like seeking out to confirm that now. So your brain is always like seeing all of the men that are like shitty and lame and don't step up and don't provide. And, you know, is it
Yeah.
that what you're like seeing? Because I just told her, I was like, if you shift your mindset and you start saying, oh, all men are so great and I love men and I love what they can do for me and I love how, supportive they are. I love how they protect and provide. And I love that. And I love men and men are amazing. I'm like, what kind of men do you think your brain would be like picking up on out there? You know?
So true. It's hilarious too because being a part of the LGBT community, all the fucking time we hear these chicks just who are like fed up with men. I'm gonna switch teams. I'm just gonna start dating women. And I'm just sitting here being like, bro, you have no fucking clue. It's the same fucking shit. It's just same shit, different
Right?
pile. And so yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it really comes back to like who are you attracting into your life and what do you want to see shift? This like goes back to like a similar exercise we did in another episode where it's like, what do you want to see shift?
Yeah.
Reframing it. This is a huge part
Mm.
of what we do, what we work with people on is changing that inner tape. Because like you said, if you keep saying like, oh, they always let me down, they
They're lazy, like they're no
yeah,
good for nothing, like they always, don't show up for me, whatever it is.
it's the law of attraction. You're just going to attract it. So
Yeah.
how can we shift your mindset and reframe your vocabulary so that you're actually attracting, because there's all kinds of different men out there, just like there's all different kinds of
Yeah,
women. There's lazy ass fucking women too.
totally.
So it's like, who
Totally.
do you want to attract?
Yeah. And she had started mentioning about how, she did all these like things and like he didn't appreciate it and da, da, da. And I'm like, why did you do all those things? Right? Like and why did you tolerate in the first place being with somebody like that? And I'm not saying that from a place of like, oh, I'm on a pedestal and like I know it all. I'm saying because I've been there. Every single one of my relationships, I've like done that. And I've had to take like that hard, swallow that hard pill and look at myself and say, okay, I'm the common denominator here in all of these relationships that aren't working. I'm the common denominator in this like feeling of rage and hatred towards like the men in my life. So why is that? Am I angry at
Mhm.
them or am I angry at myself? Do I hate myself because I tolerate it and I allow it because my self-worth is like nothing? It's like in the negatives. So I'll tolerate
Who's gonna
anything
admit
just to
that?
receive love and to get my needs met. I'll like bend over backwards and try to fix them. And, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
really had to look inward at why was I choosing men like that? Because ultimately, it doesn't matter what relationships you have in your life, they're a reflection of your worth. What you tolerate in those relationships is a reflection of your self-worth.
Yeah, this is pretty common for just about anything. It's like people are so quick to blame other
Yeah.
people, other things, other
Mhm.
situations like outside of themselves, but the reality is that whatever you're experiencing, whatever is happening to you is a reflection of something internal. So for example, if I get in a fight with my spouse, it's even if factually it seems like it's their fault, there is a piece that I'm responsible for because I have triggered something, or I've not done something, or I have done something. It all comes back to you as well. So that's not to say that the other person doesn't have any responsibility. It just means that it takes two to tango. There's
Right. And
always a piece for each person.
100%. And it's like you can't control the other person. That's the thing, is like even if they have their role in it and it's two to tango, you cannot control how they tango. You can only
True.
control your dance and how you show up and your, nurturing your own wounds. Like only you can do that for you. You cannot do that for the other person. So blaming them and putting all the responsibility onto them is not serving you well. It's actually a
Mhm.
disservice to yourself to not take ownership and look inward at, say, where am I broken? Where am I broken? Where are the gaps where I allow this treatment? Where do my boundaries need to be like built up? Where do
Yeah,
the
and when
consequences like come into those boundaries when people like break those boundaries? Like where's that where's that responsibility to myself that I say no like 100% when that person crosses my boundaries? So
yeah.
it's like, I was like, do we like actually hate men, or do we hate ourselves because we don't know how to um feel that worthiness of finding that high value man who is respectful, who does care for our needs, who does protect, who does provide. It really comes down to a lack of worthiness. You feel like you're not worth that person. So if you find someone that you can fix, then if you can fix them, then you can fix you. And it's a total subconscious like thing. But like if you are in a relationship where you have to fix someone in any way, shape, or form, you're actually trying to find the ways to like fix yourself.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap.
Well, so I have a prime example of this. So, um, and hopefully they don't listen to this and get offended, but it's mainly just for example's sake. It's my parents' relationship, right?
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I lived with them for a period of time after my divorce. So I kind of had like a greater insight to all these workings,
Mm,
but what I noticed is they kind of blame each other a lot. And so it just as an example, my dad would be like, "Well, why should I do all this work and all this healing? She's never going to do anything. She's always going to be in denial, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "Well, think about it this way. When you start doing the work, I'm and I said the same like what you said. I'm like, you're never going to be able to change her. No matter how many times you say to her, "Oh, you need to work on this and you need to do that and you need to blah blah blah." No matter how many times you fucking say that, it's never going to get through to her. The best thing you can do is for yourself is heal how you react, heal your triggers to things, because if you start doing this work, and it's going to be fucking hard, it's going to be extra hard because you're the only one doing it to begin with, she will start to feel the difference. She will feel it. It will
right.
be subtle, but she will start feeling the difference and she will begin to react differently. And will she ever start doing the work too? Maybe not. But she might just she might kind of heal through you in a sense, because she'll start to change. She'll
100%.
start to pick up on like the different ways that you're reacting, the different ways that you're showing up, this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it really comes down to breaking that false belief, because I know that he's still in that. Like he won't keep doing that work because he just has this false belief of like, why should I do this if she's not doing it?
Right. But it comes down to like that exact example. It's like we're always so concerned about the other person, the other person. They have to do this or they're doing this wrong. And it's like for one moment, you kind of have to say like fuck the other person. Who cares about the other person? You have to do you. You have to focus on you and your healing for you, not for the other person. It's the same with forgiveness. Right? People get so hung up on, well, I don't want to like forgive that person because it's like letting them off the hook. And it's like that forgiveness is for you and for your heart and for your like well-being, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
about like them to let them off the hook. It's so that you can be free and clear inside and you can be filled with like love, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
hatred and resentment and guilt and frustration and all that stuff. Because it's very like toxic to hold that all in. So it's like it's for you. So we have to shift out of like, oh, if I do this, it's like for the other person. And that's kind of like it gets to like that hateful, spiteful place of like, well, I'm not gonna do it because you're not doing it. And
Yeah.
then you're just on a hamster wheel and that you can never get off of.
Yeah, for sure. It's, yeah, forgiveness is definitely about taking back your own power. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about forgiving them for what they've done because it's okay. It's forgiving them for what they've done because maybe they didn't know better, maybe they didn't know how to choose differently, and then you get to take that
Yes.
power back and show up with compassion, show up with love for yourself and other people.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that you mentioned too was about boundaries. It's like if you can't set the boundary of, maybe you have this boundary of, I'm going to start doing the work, and if I feel like there's if I feel like, this thing keeps happening, then maybe that's a boundary that I'm setting.
Yeah.
It's like you always say, it comes back to your self-worth. It comes back to your self-worth is basically a boundary. It's like, what are you willing to take? And I know a lot of people will just sit there, and I've experienced it myself, sit there and say, well, I'm married, so I have to make it work. I have to do
Right.
this. I mean, you don't have to. You're
Yeah,
just choosing
that's
to.
yeah, that's a story that you're telling yourself so that you can avoid responsibility of your choices. That's you saying, I don't have a choice, but that's actually not true. To say that you don't have a choice is it's very disempowering to yourself. Like it really is. So everyone out there who's like, "Oh, I don't have a choice." It's like you do. It's just that you're afraid to make it consciously. So you make this unconscious like default pattern choice based on your level of self-worth. But then you're mad at the world. You're mad at your spouse. You're mad at everyone. It's everyone else's fault. It's not you. You don't have any choice. You're just a victim in it all. But that's you have to ask yourself, is that mindset and mentality, is that helping me or hurting me?
And that's not to
Only
say,
you can ask that.
yeah. I mean, this is not to say go get a divorce or anything like that, break up or whatever. This is
Yeah.
just saying you need to kind of go inside and really reflect on
Yeah.
exactly what you said, just your
I've
self-worth.
had
And
clients too where it's like, I just know that they're not gonna get a divorce, right? I know that they're not happy in their relationship. And I just know that they're not gonna leave because there is safety and security there so that they want to like choose that. So, and I would never encourage someone to like get a divorce. People have to figure out their own things of like what they want. But what I do with people in relationships is I help them to increase their self-worth. I help them to love themselves, right? I help them to create healthy boundaries because all of that and then mindset shifts and taking ownership, that alone can shift a relationship drastically. That
mhm,
can inspire somebody else to make little changes, and those little changes over time they add up and they make the relationship different. So when you're actually feeling good because you feel like really good and confident when you set those boundaries and you say no, that's my boundary, and you actually follow up with the consequence if that boundary is broken, whatever that is for you, when you do that, you start to feel like more at ease and you're less angry and you're less hateful, right? Because you're not hating yourself and angry at yourself because you can't set that boundary. You've actually like set it and it feels good. And boundaries are not just for the person who sets it. Boundaries are really healthy and helpful for the other person that you're setting that boundary with. It's good for them too, because people need to know where their boundaries are, right? Like you go to work and
Mm-hmm.
there's rules and there's boundaries and there's things you do and there's things that you don't do, right? Like that's just how
Yeah.
it works. And that helps keep people um accountable and keeps them responsible, right? So those boundaries are good for them. If they don't have any boundaries, whether it's your, your child or your spouse or your parents, whoever, if you don't have that boundary, then they're just gonna feel like they can like do whatever. But that's actually
Yeah.
hurtful for them too because they're not reining in their behavior. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
No one's keeping them accountable to their bad behavior. So there's just like a free for all for them. And it's actually not healthy for them either because they aren't learning to regulate themselves and their behavior and their reactions, right? They're not learning to respond. Like they're not growing either because they're just
Mm-hmm.
doing like whatever. So
Yeah.
boundaries are very, very helpful in many capacities.
Yeah, I have an example of that too. So I know someone um whose sister kind of like calls them all the time and just sort of like meaningless shit and like asking questions that you could easily just Google and whatever. And they're always accepting the call even when it's inconvenient for them because they don't
Right.
want to, because they're like that's how she connects with me. And I know that, but at the same time it's sometimes a little bit annoying because I can't come up with all the solutions for her. Like she's a grown fucking woman. And um and I also don't want to like tarnish the relationship. And I'm kind of like, well, this ties into just what you were saying is by setting that boundary, being like, hey, sis, that like sometimes you ask me these things that you could easily figure out on your own. And I know you're just trying to connect with me, but sometimes it's very inconvenient for me because I have a lot of shit going on in my life too that I need to deal with. And
Mhm.
and it's almost by not setting that boundary, it's almost doing the sister a disservice because you're not
Yeah.
allowing her to take control of her situation and figure out things for herself and grow in that way. And
Yes. Totally.
I get it. Like I get it from the perspective of of this person who doesn't want to confront. It's like they're uncomfortable with confrontation. They're uncomfortable with, doing something that maybe is going to ruin the relationship with their sister that they're very close with.
Can I just say something there?
Yeah.
That's a judgment and a conclusion that if you set a boundary, that automatically equals a confrontation. And that's a terrible judgment and conclusion. You're basically saying no matter what, it's just going to be a confrontation. And it's like if you say it, then it will be so, right? Like what if it was just not a confrontation? What if it was just a conversation,
Yeah.
right? I
Hmm.
think people kind of like create this idea in their heads that it's going to be a confrontation and a fight or a battle, but what if it's not? What if it was just like easy?
Yeah, like just people who avoid confrontation in general. It's like, yeah, I think you're right. They probably do think that confronting someone is going to be hard every single time, but from my experience, sometimes you think it's going to be hard and you bring it up and the person's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, totally.
And then you're just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, sweet. Okay."
Yeah, there's been so many times where I've had like very like sensitive like things where I've had to like set a boundary or say no or even call someone out and have that like perceived confrontation. And it was never a confrontation because I just spoke my truth and I was calm and grounded and set my boundary with that person. instead of getting all like flustered about it and angry because I've like pent it up for like years and years and years, my boundaries, right? I've like stuffed it inside. I've like released that and let it all go. And then when I had to say that boundary to that person, I literally like turned around and I was like, holy shit, that was so easy. Like, because it's easier than you think. When people respect boundaries and they
Mhm.
will respect you when you put boundaries in. It might not be easy at first, especially when you've had people who have been like taking advantage of your lack of boundaries, I'll say. Right? When you have those people
Right.
who've been like receiving from from that and they enjoy it, right? Just getting whatever they want and having whatever behavior they want. They're not going to like it at first. But over time, that relationship will get easier and it will just be so and it won't be such a thing where you have to really assert your boundary. They'll just like know and they'll respect it. And the relationship will be more harmonious because you won't be feeling all this like pent up anger inside because everyone's like taking advantage of you. But like it's not them. It's you because you never say no or you never say like, you know what, I can't do that today.
Mhm.
You're like pouring yourself out and draining yourself and you're hating it, but you don't have the confidence and the self-worth to actually say, you know what? No.
Yeah, and this is funny that you kind of said that it's sort of draining you and everything because I notice this pattern in people who don't have these strong boundaries like this
Hmm.
is that they often often identify as an empath and often lack energetic boundaries as well. And so
Right, yes.
they take on shit from other people
Right.
unknowingly.
Yeah.
And so for that reason they'll identify as like I'm empathic and I just feel so many things. But really what that tells me is because I'm also empathic, but I don't let people energetically berate me because I
Right.
have strong energetic boundaries. And just as a caveat to that, like when I first started learning how to do this kind of energetic work,
Yeah.
I did take on a lot of shit before I realized, okay, I need to have an energetic boundary as well as,
Yeah.
you know, these other kind of there. I feel like there's some boundaries that are a little more tangible than what I'm talking about here. But
Right. Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
basically before I would go into a session with a client, I would start feeling all their fucking shit. And to
Mhm.
me, that's what I mean as an energetic boundary is like I'm allowing all that stuff to come in where I could have that energetic boundary and be like, hey, nope, I'm not going
Right.
to allow that in until we're in session.
Yeah. And I like that you said that I'm allowing it in because that's again that piece of like ownership where it's like I'm allowing it in, not nothing else, me. We always make choices. Every single day we're making choices 24/7. We're always making choices. It's just a matter of are you making conscious choices,
Mm-hmm.
unconscious choices from your like subconscious default patterns and beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So you get to choose, but once you are no longer in denial about your choices, you can actually start making choices and saying, I'm not energetically available. I use that statement all the time in my practice for homework to people. I just say, I'm no longer energetically available to whatever it is. And I literally had a client who, like, our session was rather serious, I would say. Because some of my sessions are serious, some aren't, some were like laughing and it's like light and but this was a rather serious session. So when I gave her that um that statement of like I'm no longer energetically available to whatever it was in the session, um I'd actually like seen her quite a few weeks later and she was like, yeah, I was, somewhere and I, didn't want to buy a certain thing. And I remembered like that statement and I said, I'm not energetically available to this right now. And she was like, it just totally worked. She was like, I no longer had an interest to buy that thing and I just carried on and it was so great. And so energetic boundaries can like when you set them and you're saying, I'm not available for that, whether it's like, other people's bad energy or their heavy emotions or, buying, that energy within you of wanting to like buy something that you consciously don't want right now, right? they're so beneficial to like set that energetic boundary. And on the opposite of that, you could also claim what you want. I'm only energetically available for. You can
Right.
you can put it out there of like, what are you available for energetically? You bring it in, fill up that space with what you do want.
Yeah, I can give another example for that too. So it's just this past weekend where I was out at the lake and there's no cell reception. There's no Wi-Fi, but technically you could buy Wi-Fi. It's like one of those places you could buy Wi-Fi
Oh,
and get it
who
in the
buys
common
Wi-Fi
area.
while you're camping? You got to just like be out there.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at is I got a bunch of messages on my phone before we went out of the reception area, and a lot of
Yeah.
them were for work, which I feel like sometimes is very energetically draining for me because people are just like, I need this, I need that, and it's like, bro, like I told you guys I was going. So anyway, I could have chosen to buy the Wi-Fi, respond to everyone, be like, hey, I'm on vacation, leave me the fuck alone. But instead, I chose to be energetically unavailable. I'm just unavailable right now, guys. And I'm choosing to be available to this like beautiful, serene naturescape. And it just made it so much more enjoyable for me instead of
Yes.
being so stressed out. And
Right.
we have the one kid that is really not a great sleeper, has really bad tantrums and all this shit. So I could have been like stressed out about that and then fucking freaked out on him and all this other shit. But instead I
Yeah.
chose the opposite. And I was able to just like, when he was having a tantrum, be more grounded, be more
Yes.
present, and just handle it really calmly, which I feel like in the grand scheme of things made the trip a way more relaxing for
Yes.
me, even though I have to still deal with the tantrum either way. It made it
Yeah.
more relaxing for me because I just got to just be present.
Right. That's so beautiful because like that's the power of your choice, right? You made a choice there, and that is like how powerful your choices are. So when you give away your power and say, "Oh, I didn't have a choice,"
Mm-hmm.
that's like not it's not great for you. And I wanted to say like a lot of times people think we always have to like verbalize our boundaries, verbalize, I'm not available, blah 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 blah. But in that example, you didn't do anything. Your action was enough to show your boundary that you didn't reply and that this was your weekend. You didn't have to be like, oh, I have to get back to them and da, da, da. It's like, no, I already told them I'm away. I'm like offline. And that is a very clear boundary without saying any words at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very clear boundary. So good job for you
Thanks.
doing that. That's awesome. It's hard for some people. Because it
Yeah,
comes
it
back
was.
to like that self-worth of like, oh, I have to like, they have to make sure like they know like, and I have to connect with him and like just let them know one more time and like, that insecurity.
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure. Definitely your actions can speak louder than words, I would say a lot of the time,
yeah,
maybe even most of the time.
most of the time I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I can
Right? Like
just
it's
take
like
that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say if, like for example, that friend and her sister's calling her all the time, right? Sometimes a boundary without saying anything would be like not answering,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
And I know that people are going to say things like, but what if it's an emergency? I had a client do this with me once. We talked about it on another episode, how I always talk about don't have your cell phone in your room
Mhm.
kind of thing. What if it's emergency? Well, is this person a grown adult? Are they old enough that they could figure something out on their own? Are you 911? I know it's like seems kind of dramatic the way that I'm saying it, but it's true. It's
Yeah,
and it
that's
is
true.
it's a choice. Like, yeah, they might they
Like
might they might actually have an emergency, and I'm very sorry if that does happen to you, your family, or any of your friends. But there's systems in place in our society to help with that. You don't have to be that. You don't have to be 911. Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so if this client had like empowered herself to put in the boundaries, right? then that would be empowering her children to um not be so reliant and codependent on mom for all of that. They would say, oh, okay, this is like a true like emergency, like I call 911 in this situation. Or they would find like other ways instead of like that codependency on like that one person like all the time for like every little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they start to
Yeah,
like stand on their own 2 feet and feel confident in that you're empowering other people by having your own boundaries
for sure. You teach them about
through, yeah.
boundaries by showing them your boundaries.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Um, so yeah, that wrapping that all back to like the beginning of like that statement of like, you know, I hate men.
Hmm.
It's like through all of that, like the boundaries and like the self-worth and all of that, when you take ownership of all of that and you really grab it and you sit with it and you digest it, your relationships start to improve. And you'll notice that when you take ownership of yourself and why you lack boundaries, why you lack self-worth, when you get to the why of that and get curious about it, then your language and your relationships start to change. You stop saying, oh, I hate men. Oh, men are the worst. Oh, men are such a burden. Men are so lazy. You stop saying that because you stop projecting onto them, right?
Hmm.
Those are your own thoughts about you. And you start saying, when you start to increase your self-worth, when you start to feel good and confident about setting boundaries, you start saying things like, well, I love men. Men never take advantage of me. Why would they? I have amazing boundaries. I know how to say no, right? Men
Yep.
always things always work out in my favor with men and my relationships because my self-worth is really high and I don't tolerate abuse. I don't tolerate disrespect. I recognize it right away and I say no or I leave, right? And that's kind of where it all kind of ties back to that.
And there absolutely is a place to express those feelings of, I hate men, they're lazy, that kind of shit. And this is something that I'd like to offer to those listening is the T chart exercise. So just use the link in the description or in our bio to join our email list, and we will send you to our resources page. And you can get the T chart exercise. So basically you'll be able to express these feelings that you have, because I do believe that you need to express them. You need to get them out first. Don't
Yeah,
just like let it all fester inside. But
100%.
then this exercise allows you to reframe those. So you can see the things you wrote down. I hate men. They are lazy. Okay, what's the reframe of each of those? I hate men. I love men. They're lazy. They're hardworking.
I
And
wonder if even if
basically,
you could, I wonder even if you could take it a step further with that, like before you like make that reframe of like, I hate men, and then reflect it to yourself first and then reframe it. So it's
yeah,
like, if
there's
you're saying I hate men, how is that like reflecting, like what part of you are you
mm,
projecting with that statement? What part of you do you hate? Because I've met a lot of people and they literally say like, I hate myself. I hate myself. And I used to
mm,
feel that. I had a very like sucked up like self-hatred. I hated myself, like every particle of my being. I don't know why I just did. And I just hated. And so using those pieces of what you're saying as a projection. So maybe like
right.
reflect it back to you and say, what pieces of me do I hate? What pieces of me are lazy? What pieces of me don't show up? And then like reframe it about yourself, because if you reframe it about yourself, you can reframe it about them.
Right. Yeah, this is actually maybe two separate exercises that we can give to the people. Go to
Yeah.
yinandyanghealing.com/resources and we'll have them there for you. We'll do the T chart exercise, and we'll also do I believe what you're referring to is the 5 whys. So It's a very simple exercise. We could explain it right now. You take that thing that you're feeling, I hate men, for example, and ask yourself, why do I hate men? Well, because this and that. Okay, well, what's the worst part about that? Okay, and what's the worst part of that? And then yeah, we can add that as an extra step of, okay, how does this relate back to me?
Mhm. Yeah, because I think that's like I really think that's an important piece.
So just a heads up, people, these resources are not created yet, so just be patient with us. We will get them up for you. And
Yes.
we'll put the links in the descriptions of the show. So we'll have them for you so that you can go through those. But
Yeah.
anywho, any last words, Kirsten?
Um, hmm. I just really encourage people to like the number one thing that you can do is moving out of denial and reflecting on the words that you use. And, you know, I guess just reframing things too in the point of view of like, what if I was like passing by a conversation and I overheard a man saying, I fucking hate women. I fucking hate them. How would that make you feel? Right? We're so quick to be like, oh, I hate men. And it's like you just say it, like it just rolls off the tongue. But it's so hurtful to say that because if you heard a man saying that about a woman, you would feel hurt inside and you would feel disgust at that comment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I just encourage anyone who's listening or watching to really take a look at your language that you're using.
Inner reflection. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you
Yeah.
use the link in the description of this show to get these resources that we just talked about, and subscribe, follow.
Yes.
What are the different notifications? um, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah. Ciao.